Welcome to today's session on finishing processes. This is session 11 and the name of the subject is Fashion Material and Production Management for Merchandisers. We are going to talk about the finishing processes which is undertaken in a garment manufacturing factory or a garment export house. So broadly, what we're going to talk about is ironing, pressing, and finishing, the techniques and the equipments which are used for doing these. You can see the visuals of a factory wherein the production floor can be seen, the finishing can be seen, and then, of course, at the end of it, there's a runway on which a model is carrying the garment as well as the accessories, and then, of course, the visual, the illustration through which the designers try to portray the oncoming collection for the current season. Now the objectives, if you look at that, our first objective is to examine the basic components of finishing equipments, which is pressing. And the second that we are going to discuss is the effect of pressing equipment on product quality and the performance. Now if we look at pressing, we have come around this word pressing many times, but then there is a difference between pressing and ironing. Now the definition of pressing is the application of heat, moisture and pressure to shape, mold or crease the fabric or the garments or the garment parts into forms intended by the designer. So pressing is about there has to be heat, there has to be moisture. Moisture helps in giving shape to the garments or to the fabrics, and of course without the pressure we'll not be able to give any particular shape or mold. And then we talk about the shape, mold or crease. So you make the creases and then you press it so that the crease stays, or you give a particular shape to it, or you mold it in a particular three-dimensional shape. And the pressing can be done on fabrics or can be is required in case of completed garments, or pressing is also required in case of garment parts where the garment has not been completed. And to undertake the subsequent stitching operations, we need to press certain parts so that the stitching can be done very accurately. So that's the definition of pressing. And the pressing equipment is used to prepare components for stitching and to set the shape in completed garments. So what we do while we are stitching the garment, in between when we do the pressing of the garment parts or the fabric, that is in pressing. And when we are pressing the garments, when the garments have been completed, so that is the finished pressing. Now in process pressing, which is also called under pressing, is used to crease or to give a shape and or to smooth the components for more accurate seaming. Imagine there's a fabric which is crumpled. There are two pieces of fabrics which are crumpled and you're trying to stitch them. Obviously, the stitch quality is going to be seriously affected. And if you compare this case with another case where the two fabrics have been ironed very properly, and then you are stitching, then the stitch quality is going to be much better. So for accurate seaming, these fabrics or the garment parts, they should be creased or shaped or smoothed. Now the sharp edges on garment component, like the collar point, the pointed edge of the collar, in such cases which have very sharp edges. So sharp edges on garment component, they need to be pressed in order to sew it accurately. Now finish pressing, which is called off pressing, and which is after the garment has been completed, a garment has been completely stitched. So in that case, we need pressing to add the final shape to the seams and to the garments. And despite the best of the machines and despite the best of the workmen, even the most well executed seams, they have to be finish pressed. Now if you don't press the garment, then even despite the best of the stitching done, the garment is going to look a little ungainly, is going to look a little bad at the seams, because there's going to be slight amount of puckering which will be visible. So without pressing, the garment cannot be completed. It will not have a good look. Now, the time, the temperature, the pressure, and the types of mechanical devices that are used for pressing. So for certain amount of time, at certain temperature, and with certain amount of pressure, using whatever type of mechanical devices that is used for ironing or pressing. Now, time, temperature, pressure, and the type of device, that is going to depend on the type of material used. That's one. Now, if it is thick material, you need more time, you need more temperature, you need more pressure, and you need that type of mechanical device, which with the help of which we can exert that much of pressure. If the fabric is thin or very dainty, like a silk chiffon, so in that case, the amount of time required is going to be less. Temperature we are going to use less. Pressure is going to required will be very less. Otherwise, we are going to damage the fabric. And the type of mechanical device would also be not a heavy-duty device. It's going to be the normal handheld iron that we are going to use for pressing off the silk chiffon. Now, the second thing, the second factor is the shape or the form that is desired in the final garment. So, depending on the shape or the form, we will choose the type of mechanical device for pressing. And the degree of permanency needed, if you need a permanent creasing or a permanent press, which can be possible only in case of thermoplastic fibers, like polyesters or nylons. So in those cases, the time, temperature, pressure will be high, and the mechanical device is also going to be heavy duty, so that we get those permanent pleats, the knife pleat skirts that are used as uniforms, or any other garment wherein this permanency is required, especially when we look at the uniforms worn by the people in the Navy or in the defense in the army. So in those cases, you need very perfect and permanent creases. So in those cases, the type of mechanical devices are going to be not the handheld iron, but is going to be something which is heavy duty, and that is what we are going to also look at in the subsequent slides. Now, the elements of pressing, if you see the elements of pressing, there is heat, there is steam involved, and there is pressure. So without heat, steam, and pressure, pressing will not be possible. Now, if you look at heat, heat is needed to soften the fibers, stabilize, and set the desired shape. If you don't heat something, you won't be able to give it a great shape. And what is the source? Source can be either the heated surface, which is the iron, with where the surface of the metal is going to be very hot, with the help of which we do the iron. Or the source can be steam. With the help of steam also, we can transfer heat to the material, which needs to be iron. Now, if you look at steam, which is essentially moisture or the water vapor in the given air. Now, steam is the fastest means of transferring heat into the fabric. The heated metal cannot heat the fabric so fast as can steam. That's why steam presses, they can iron faster, and we need lesser amount of time and lesser amount of pressure, so to say. And if it is not a steam iron, if it's just a plain iron, then it will take you more time. You will need more pressure to do the ironing of the garment. And how is steam created? Steam is created by heating water in a boiler. Steam iron has a boiler within itself, a small container in which the water is there, and the water is transferred into the metal plate, and in that metal plate the water is boiled, and the steam comes out of the holes which are there on the metal plate of the iron. One thing of caution over here is that if the pressure is very high, then that steam is going to be hotter and drier. Now, higher pressure means in a given amount of air, there will be lesser amount of water vapor, and that is going to be hotter and drier. Now, in case of a very soft or very delicate fabrics, hotter or drier steam that can cause damage to the fabric. So for heavier fabrics, hotter and dry steam can be used, but for dainty or for delicate fabrics, the steam should be not made under high pressure. It should not be very hot, and the steam should be more. It should not be dry. Now, the effective use of steam, it reduces the required amount of pressure and time. So, if you have employed a labor with a plain iron, the person will take more time and will have to put in a lot of effort to iron the same number of garments. But in case of steam press or a steam iron, the amount of time required would be less, and the amount of pressure also would be required would be less, which means that the effort required would also be less, and therefore a person who has been given the steam press will take lesser amount of time, will be more energetic, and will be able to give you more number of iron garments in a given amount of time. After talking about heat and steam, we will now talk about pressure. Now, pressure is applied to alter the shape and increase the permanency of the molding or the creasing. Now, pressure can be applied mechanically or by steam. Now, mechanically, the pressure is applied is something that is known to us. But how is the pressure applied by steam is something that we will discuss in the subsequent slide. For now, pressure can be applied mechanically or it can be applied by steam. Now, pressure has to be optimum. There shouldn't be too much pressure, because too much pressure implies would lead to distorted fabric surface or flattened texture or permanent fabric damage or garment damage. So depending on the type of garment and the type of fabric and of course the type of fiber, we have to ensure that we apply the right kind of pressure. Otherwise, we may distort the fabric surface. Now, if the fabric has some kind of a texture and it is very soft, and we apply a lot of pressure to it, the entire texture will be gone. And the beauty of the fabric is that texture. So that beauty will be gone. So which means it becomes a defect. So that's why it's important to maintain the right amount of pressure. And if inordinate amount of pressure may lead to permanent fabric damage or the garment damage, which is equivalent to losses. So that's why pressure needs to be optimum, neither too less nor too much. Now let's look at the mechanical pressure. Now what do we require to apply mechanical pressure? We require tables, we need the bucks, and we need the irons to mold the garment. Iron is the handheld iron that we use at home. That's the iron. Table is again something that is used at home or in the industry also. Buck is something that we are going to discuss further. Now, mechanical pressure is specified by the amount of force or pounds of pressure per unit of time. So which means the amount of force that we exert per unit of time, that is pressure. And that's what may lead to damages, or that is what may lead to great quality of pressing. Now, if you look at the air or steam pressure, air or steam is blown into the garment to expand to its full size. And air or steam pressure at the point of contact is equal to pressure into time. Now, what happens is that imagine you have a trouser which has to be, let's say, ironed or pressed. Now, the trouser is mounted onto such a mechanism where the waistband of the trouser is clipped from the top and the bottom hem of the trouser is clipped at the bottom with clamps. Now, inside the two legs of the trouser, we have a balloon kind of thing, balloon kind of a structure inside, and the size of the balloon is slightly bigger than the size of the trouser legs. And what we do is that we supply steam inside that balloon. Now that balloon is semi-perforous, meaning to say that it expands and certain amount of steam also passes through that balloon kind of structure. That balloon kind of thing is slightly pervious. It has very small holes through which the steam can come out. So when you apply steam, when you supply steam through that balloon expands, and when it expands and exerts pressure onto the leg of the trouser. And with one blow of steam, you are able to press the two legs of the trouser. And in this case, there is certain amount of pressure which is being exerted, and for a certain amount of time, we apply it. Certain amount of time which can do our job of pressing the trouser legs. So that is the way of applying air or steam pressure. Now, if you look at the elements of pressing, controlling the elements of steam, heat and pressure to suit the materials and styling of the garment is part of the adjustment needed for quality pressing. So anyone who's in the industry who's been pressing for quite some time, whenever they look at a garment, first thing that they try to determine is how much of heat, how much of steam and how much of pressure will be required to get the best quality pressing. And for that, what they do is they ask for a small piece of fabric in which the garment has been made. So they do their trial and error on that piece of fabric, in terms of the heat, steam and pressure. And once they get that magic combo, only then they start actually pressing the real ready garments. The amount of pressure and the time of pressure application can be minimized by drying and rapidly cooling the garment during the pressing process using vacuum. Now, this is one very important aspect which is used in the industry, but unfortunately is not available in our homes. Now, the amount of pressure and time of pressure application, it can be minimized. So what we are saying here is that we don't have to press so much, and we don't have to press it for such a long time. Why? Because we have this mechanism of drying and rapidly cooling the garment during the pressing process using vacuum. So what happens is that you press the garment, the press is applying heat and the steam and the pressure. Now, the moment the pressing has been completed, we press a pedal, and we use the vacuum, and with the help of the vacuum, we suck away all the steam and we dry using vacuum. So the garment has been pressed, it is hot and it is moist with steam. Immediately with the help of vacuum, the garment is dried and cooled immediately, and then we can continue with the pressing of the other parts of the garment. Now, this mechanism is not available to us at homes. Now, why do we have to use the vacuum and immediately dry and immediately cool the garment? Because imagine wax. When you take wax, you melt it and you put it in a container of a particular shape, and you fill that container with a molten wax and you let it cool down. After it has cooled down, you remove the container, and there you have a candle, or you have the wax in the shape of the container. Now imagine what's going to happen if you put the molten wax in that container, and even before the wax has cooled down, if you remove the container, the wax is going to spludge. It is going to lose its shape because you have taken away the container even before the wax has cooled down. So same is the case of garment. You have ironed the garment, it is still hot. Now if you remove the garment, if you disturb the garment and then you try to iron the other part of the garment, then the ironing that you have done will get disturbed, will get marred, and therefore you will not get the best quality of pressing. So you iron a garment, or you iron a garment part, but immediately you have to dry it and cool it using vacuum, and then go on to the other parts of the garment for subsequent pressing. Now let's see the types of pressing equipment. So we have buck press, we have iron press, we have block or die pressing, and we have form pressing. And we're going to look at them one by one. Of course, the second one, iron press, is the most successful and mostly used in India. So let's look at the buck press. So you can see the visual. The blue part is the buck. Now the buck is made of a structure which is hard from inside. There is a sponge kind of a padding on top of that hard surface, and on top of that sponge like padding we have this blue fabric. So in total the surface being offered by this buck is something which is soft, but at the same time it is hard. It is made of resilient material which gives us the best pressing or the ironing result. Now this buck press is used for in-process as well as finish pressing, meaning to say when the garment is being made, in between also this can be used, and when the garment has been finished, the complete garment has been stitched, then also this can be used. And the buck press, this particular press that you can see, it is commonly used by makers of slacks, skirts and jackets. Now slacks are narrow fitted trousers, and skirts and the jackets. Now the skirt part, the hip part, or the back of the jackets, now these can be kept on this buck, and the head comes down and presses with certain amount of pressure for certain amount of time at certain amount of temperature, along with certain setting of steam. And once the time is over, automatically that head is going to open and it's going to go back to its original position because of the hydraulic mechanism. So this is the buck press, where the head is connected with the rest of the machine, rest of the equipment. You cannot carry the head here and there, it is not portable. So that's about buck presses. So the components include the buck padding, which is the blue part, the steam and the vacuum system. So that head which comes down, through that the steam passes, and there is a vacuum system which is connected to the buck. So when you press the pedal, then it is going to suck the air, the steam from the buck, and thereby immediately dry and cool the garment or the garment part. And then of course we have the frame and the table. The table is there on top of which the frame has been erected, and on top of that we have the buck and we have the head. And the gauges are there. You can see the knobs at the below the frame, the table. So the gauges are for the time, temperature, pressure, and the steam. Now, when we are using this system, we can have manual or automatic controls for steam, for vacuum, for heat, and for pressure. Now, automatic controls, the controls are there, but it has been seen that once you start using this buck press, during the day you will find that you've kept the temperature at let's say 110 degrees centigrade. You might find that the temperature is lesser than 110 or maybe more than 110, but the gauge is showing 110. So sometimes when these buck presses they malfunctioning, not in a big way, then we have to use our own checks and balances and see that what we are seeing in the digital regulator and what you are actually getting, whether they are the same or not. If not, then make the changes. So in that case, you manually control the steam, vacuum, heat, and pressure. So it happens. It's a practical thing that happens. Now the blue part, which is the buck. Now the bed buck is usually fixed in a horizontal position because it is horizontal on top of which you are going to put the garment or the garment part, and then you are going to press it. Now bed buck is what supports the garment during pressing. Head is moved down to cover the garment, and steam is released and drawn through the garment by the vacuum system. So steam is released from the head and then it is sucked through the buck using the vacuum system. Now when the head is released, it returns to an open position. Now please remember this head is very heavy. So when you pull it down, because it has a hydraulic system, so with very slight amount of effort you can pull it down. And once you have pulled it down, then it's going to press the garment with the amount of pressure that you have already set. And once the timer is on and the pressing has been done for, let's say, 20 or 30 seconds, it's going to open on its own and it's going to return to the open position. Now let's look at the buck padding. Now buck padding, that padding is done where you have a hard surface, then you have a padding material, sponge kind of thing, and then you have the blue fabric. Now that buck padding, it serves to distribute the steam evenly. You know, if you have the steam at just one point, it's going to burn or maybe damage the fabric or the garment at that point. So when the steam is being applied, the buck diffuses it, it distributes the steam evenly. So there is no particular point where the steam is going to hit the surface. It reduces the impact of steam on fabric, so the steam is not going to hit the fabric directly and at one point. So it reduces the impact of steam because some amount of impact is borne by the buck padding. And it provides soft but at the same time resilient surface, which gives us the best quality of pressing. And of course, buck padding protects from shine due to high pressure. If you have a hard surface, on the hard surface, if you keep a dark color garment and you try to press it, if you press it, all the crease parts, all the places where you have pocket, the pocket lining, the pocket edges, all those shapes, all those areas will have a shine. And that shine mark looks very ugly, especially in black garments. So this buck padding gives us such a surface where when you iron even black garments or dark garments, you will not have any shine mark anywhere. And buck padding, it acts as buffer to prevent uneven steam pressure, which may cause steam spots. Now, steam spots is when you would have seen sometime at home in the steam press that from the hole, instead of the steam, entire droplet drops onto the fabric or onto the garment. Now, if a very hot drop of water falls on the garment at one point, that point, you know, that hot water is going to cause a spot mark, which later on would look like an eyesore, which will look very bad. And that is a rejection, or that is a reject, which cannot be sold. So that is not something which can happen in the industry. If it happens, then you know the entire garment would be rejected. So this buck padding acts as a buffer to prevent uneven steam pressure, and therefore these steam spots do not happen. So with that, we come to iron presses. Iron presses are something which are known to us. We've been using at home since ages and is the most prevalently used in India in the garment manufacturing and garment export houses. Now iron presses, it has a manual molding operation. With the help of your hand, you are going to move it to and fro horizontally and you are going to mold the garment whichever way you want to. You can do the creasing or the molding or give any shape you want to the garment. And the pressure and heat is applied with a flat contact surface. So the flat contact surface is the external most metal surface of the iron. And with the help of that iron, we apply the pressure as well as the heat. And what does the workstation consist of? So we're going to have a iron. Of course, there is going to be a power line. There will be a bed buck, the bed buck on which we are going to keep the garment and iron the garment. And then the iron support system. There is a support system on which we keep the iron. And there is a steam and vacuum system, which we will see in the next slide. So this is the visual that you see where the iron press along with this entire system is visible, and it has 9 different parts. We're going to look at them one by one. First one is the overhead rail from where on which you have the tube light attached to it. Second one is the exhaust duct. The job of the exhaust duct is to suck all the extra steam and air and remove the noise which may be caused because of application of heat and steam. Third one is the movable arm, the arm on which you may insert, you may put on the sleeves or the trouser part of the garment and do the round pressing. Then fourth is the steam generator, which the job of the steam generator is to boil the water. And fifth one is the pressing surface, the surface on which you keep the garment and press the garment. Sixth, which is the suction and blowing. So that the suction or the blowing. Now here two things are happening. On the pressing surface, you can either apply steam, which is part of blowing, or suction and blowing. The point that you see 6, that is the point where the suction is done or the blowing. Now suction is where you use vacuum to remove the steam and the air and cool the garment immediately and dry the garment. Blowing is the case where, using the same system, instead of sucking the air, we blow the air. Now blowing is done in such cases where the fabric is, or the garment is made of a delicate fabric and we are ironing it, and we also blow the air from the bottom of the pressing surface in order to reduce the impact of the iron on the fabric or the garment. So we blow air, which is the opposite of suction. Now seventh is the height adjustment, where people, the pressman can be of short height, can be of good height. So depending on the height of the person can adjust the height of the surface on which you keep the garment and do the iron. So height adjustment is also included in this. And then you have 8, which is the catching frame with catch cloth. Now 8 is simply a broader blue surface at the bottom, just below the pressing surface. Now the purpose of the number 8 is purely that if you are, let's say, pressing a long dress, you are pressing the neck or the sleeve, and the rest of the garment somehow it slides and falls. When it falls, it is not going to fall on the ground, it is going to fall on the catching frame with catch cloth. So it is going to fall on 8, it will not reach the floor, so it will not get dirty. And number 9 is the foot control for suction and blowing. So 9 is the bottommost panel that you see. So there is a horizontal panel, there is a vertical panel. So if you press the horizontal panel, it will apply suction. If you press the vertical panel, it will apply blowing. Now further about iron presses, we talked about the overhead rail, and then we talked about the exhaust duct. The purpose is to control removal of exhaust air and the noise reduction. And then we have the movable arm, for the various forms of movable arm can be installed for specific pressing operations such as turn-ups or sleeves or seams. So any particular area that needs to be pressed, without keeping it on the pressing surface. And then we have the steam generator, then the pressing surface, the surface on which you keep the garment for pressing, and the suction and blowing. Suction accelerates cooling of the material and holds it firmly on the pressing table without creases. And blowing is when we want to prevent the pressure marks at the seams or the hems. And height adjustment, like we discussed, the height of the pressing table can be adjusted so as to allow comfortable working for a standing operator. And catching frame with catch cloth is to support the dangling parts of the workpiece and protects it from soiling or getting dirty. And 9 is the foot control for suction and blowing. A horizontal bar is for suction and the vertical bar is for blowing. Further, systems may be portable or stationary. Now, this is something which is stationary because you have this huge system. But the press that we use at home is portable. You switch it, you plug it at any of the plug point, and then you can do your ironing. So that is a portable one. And the one which we saw in the previous slide, that is the stationary one. Now, difference between iron pressing and buck pressing is that iron and bed are not linked. So the first one that we saw, the buck pressing, so it had a head. A head was connected with the rest of the system. In this case, the iron is not connected with the system. You can pick up the iron and you can move it whichever way you want to. So the iron and the bed, they are not linked. That is the difference between iron press and buck press. And the iron can be kept anywhere. And pressure is applied by the operator. In buck pressing, the pressure was applied by the machine itself. The pressure regulator is set accordingly and the pressure is applied by the machine. But here the pressure is applied by the operator manually. And bed bucks used with iron systems varies size, shape and surface contour. So bed buck in this iron system, you can change depending on the type of garment that you want to press or iron. So this is another type of iron presses where this is used for flat pressing. Smaller garments can be pressed on this, and then the sleeves or the hip areas, those can be very easily pressed using the other attachment that you see, the blue attachment. This is fairly evident, for trouser pressing. Now this is again pressing, but then you can see this object, this mechanism where you can put one leg of the trouser inside this mechanism. I mean, you can actually put it onto this, and then you can press it. You press it, and then you circle it around, or turn it around, and then you can press it. So you will be able to press the garment without creating any creases. So on the side seams and inseams, slack manufacturers or trouser manufacturers, they may use long, narrow curved bucks that resemble hip curves. The hip also can be ironed using this particular mechanism. And this is another such iron pressing system where the jacket seam pressing can be done. There is a seam at the back, in the front. So those seams can be specially ironed using this particular pressing system. And the garment manufacturing houses or the garment export houses, which are predominantly doing ladies wear, outerwear, for them the most workable iron system is this universal ladies outerwear pressing system. Now this takes care of long dresses, short dresses, skirts, blouses, etc., etc. You can do let's say the trousers, you can do the skirts, you can do the dresses. All of them can be very easily done using this particular iron pressing system. Now, iron press is most commonly used pressing device in the world, most versatile and mobile. It's not stationary, it's mobile than other types of pressing units. And it can be used for in-process pressing where the garment has not been made, it is in the process. It is used for shaping component parts, and it can also be used for final pressing.